Imagine this. You're standing on your city's walls, staring at the horizon, when suddenly the ground beneath your feet starts trembling, like an earthquake. But this isn't nature's fury. It's the sound of tens of thousands of horses, ridden by the most feared warriors in history, Genghis Khan's Mongol army. They conquered more land in 25 years than the Roman Empire did in 400. So, how would you feel knowing your city was next? Would you fight, surrender, or run? But the bigger question, could you even survive? Before we jump into the chaos of an invasion, let's quickly understand why everyone feared Genghis Khan. Born as Temujin around 1162, he transformed from a struggling nomad into the most powerful conqueror in history. By uniting Mongolia's scattered tribes, he built a formidable empire that stretched from China all the way to Eastern Europe by the early 13th century. Why was he so successful? Well, Genghis Khan wasn't just ruthless. He was incredibly smart, strategic, and a master of psychological warfare. He reshaped entire civilizations, sometimes wiping out cities completely, but also creating a unified system of trade and communication. By 1227, when he died, his empire covered a mind-blowing 13 million square miles. That's bigger than the entire African continent. So, when his army appeared on the horizon, everyone knew it wasn't just another battle. It was the arrival of an unstoppable force set to rewrite history forever. Life before the invasion. Let's rewind a bit. Imagine living in the grand city of Samarkand or Nishapur around the year 1219. The streets are alive with color, bright fabrics from India, spices from the east, and voices from every corner of the Silk Road. Merchants call out their prices, children run through the alleys, and the smell of fresh bread mixes with incense in the air. In cities like these, part of the Khwarezmian Empire, life was stable, even luxurious. You had towering mosques, schools filled with scholars, and thriving trade routes that connected China to the Mediterranean. Most people lived in tightly knit communities. Families worked together, traded goods, and felt relatively safe behind thick city walls. Sure, you'd hear about distant skirmishes or rebellions, but nothing that felt close. After all, your empire was strong, the rulers were wealthy, and the armies were large. Why worry? But then, the stories start. Whispers in the market. A caravan arrives, not with goods, but with fear in their eyes. They're coming, they say. The Mongols are real, and they don't leave survivors. It still feels distant, until it doesn't. At first, it's just a strange silence from the east. The usual caravans from nearby towns stop arriving. Then one day, a lone merchant stumbles through the city gates. His clothes torn, his cart abandoned somewhere in the desert. His eyes are wide, unfocused. He doesn't ask for water. He only says one word: Otra. You've heard of Otra, a rich city along the Silk Road. Strong walls, plenty of soldiers. But the merchant says it's gone, burned, flattened, no survivors. He talks about riders so fast they seem like shadows, about walls that crumbled under giant siege engines, about a man named Genghis Khan who sends one warning: surrender or be erased. People laugh it off. They say, the Mongols? They're just desert raiders. We've faced worse. But the stories keep coming. Refugees from Bukhara, from Kujand, from cities you thought untouchable. And they all say the same thing: no one is safe. No one is spared. Suddenly, the streets feel quieter. At the market, prices rise. Guards patrol more often. You hear whispers in the mosque, and even the bravest men start to prepare their families for something they still don't fully understand. The first time you see them, they don't look like much, just dark shapes on the horizon. But then more and more appear, hundreds, then thousands. They move like a single organism, no shouting, no disorganized charge, just discipline, precision, purpose. These are not ordinary soldiers. They're Mongol horse archers, raised in the saddle since childhood. They ride fast, shoot while galloping, and rarely miss. Their bows, short, composite, deadly accurate, and powerful enough to pierce armor from a distance. Before you can even blink, arrows begin raining from the sky. And just when you think they're retreating, they turn around and surround you from the sides. That's the famous feigned retreat, one of Genghis Khan's favorite tactics. They pretend to run, draw your soldiers out, and then ambush them from all angles. Entire armies have fallen for it. But that's just the start. If your city has strong walls, they don't panic. They wait. They cut off water, food, and communication. They build siege machines on the spot, massive catapults, sometimes even using local craftsmen they've captured. Rocks, fire, even diseased bodies are hurled over the walls. In the siege of Nishapur in 1221, after a Mongol commander and Genghis Khan's son-in-law was killed by a defender, the response was swift and brutal. The Mongols stormed the city. Not only did they destroy it, they killed nearly the entire population in revenge. To them, siege warfare wasn't just about taking the city. It was psychological warfare. They made examples out of cities that resisted, so that the next one would surrender without a fight. So while you're inside the city, listening to the thuds of catapults and the eerie silence between attacks, you realize they don't just want to win, they want you to know that resistance is hopeless. Inside the city walls, time slows down. Shops close early. The streets grow quiet. Children no longer play in the courtyards. You see people boarding up their windows, sharpening knives that likely won't help, and whispering prayers under their breath. You try to keep busy, fetch water, check supplies, but the truth hangs heavy in the air. They're coming. The city council holds emergency meetings, but no one agrees on anything. Some say fight, some say surrender, others just want to flee, but the gates are locked tight. Food prices skyrocket. A loaf of bread becomes a luxury. Wells are rationed. The markets, once lively and loud, are now eerily silent. Only the occasional cart rolling through with the last onions or sacks of grain. And the sounds outside, they're getting closer. The rhythmic thud of siege engines, the distant whinny of horses. Then, silence again. Every night, you listen for that first breach in the wall. Every morning, you wonder if today is the day it all ends. Families huddle together in basements and cellars, hoping they'll be spared, knowing deep down they probably won't. Some try to stay hopeful. Others break down completely. And through it all, one question keeps echoing through the city like a drumbeat. Where is help? Is anyone coming? But in your heart, you already know the answer. As panic spreads inside the walls, the city's leaders try one last option. Diplomacy. Messengers are sent, carrying gifts of gold, fine silks, rare spices. Some cities even offer hostages, hoping to buy mercy. It's desperate, but it's been done before. Maybe, just maybe, it will work. But the Mongols weren't like other empires. Genghis Khan had clear rules. If you surrendered immediately, you might be spared. Resist, even once, and there was no turning back. Just look at what happened with the Khwarezmian Empire. When one of Genghis Khan's trade caravans arrived in Otrar, the governor accused them of being spies, seized the goods, and killed the merchants. Genghis responded by sending diplomats, a peaceful move, but they were murdered too. That was the final straw. Genghis didn't just invade, he made it his mission to wipe that empire off the map. Entire cities were destroyed. Thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, were killed, all because of one failed negotiation. So now, in your city, even if the rulers offer peace, it may be too late. The Mongols have already made their decision, and their answer is rarely yes. More often, it's silence, followed by the sound of battering rams at your gates. Honest, immersive, non-sensational. Then, it happens. At first, just a crack, wood splintering, stone breaking. The gates give way, You hear shouting, hooves, steel on steel. The Mongols pour in like a flood, fast and coordinated, with no hesitation. If your city resisted, there are no second chances. They move street by street, methodically. Fires start, some accidental, others set on purpose to smoke people out of hiding. Buildings you grew up around, homes, mosques, libraries, collapse in fire and rubble. And then, it gets quiet. That's what survivors of Nishapur remembered most. After the initial chaos, a chilling stillness. Once the Mongols took control, they didn't just destroy a city, they erased it. In Nishapur, 1221, after Genghis Khan's son-in-law was killed in battle, the Mongols retaliated by massacring nearly the entire population, possibly over 100,000 people. But here's the thing. This wasn't mindless slaughter. The Mongols used brutality as a tool, a message to other cities: surrender and live, resist and vanish. By the time the dust settles, your city is no longer a city, it's a scar. Survivors, if any, wander through ashes. Families are gone, history is gone, and the world you once knew, vanished in a single day. That's what it meant to be invaded by Genghis Khan's army. Not just conquest, erasure. If you were lucky enough to survive, life didn't stop, it simply changed. The Mongols didn't just destroy, they rebuilt. Cities that surrendered early were often spared and integrated into the empire. Skilled workers, artists, engineers, and scholars were sometimes relocated rather than executed. Genghis Khan knew the value of talent. You might find yourself far from home, serving a new ruler, speaking a new language, adapting to a new life under Mongol rule. Trade routes reopened, this time safer than before. The Mongol Empire became one of the most secure regions for merchants. You could travel from China to the Middle East under the watch of Mongol patrols. Paper money, postal systems, religious tolerance, all were introduced or improved. But still, the scars remained. Families were torn apart. Ancient traditions and local cultures were disrupted or lost. Entire generations grew up under foreign rule, remembering the day their cities fell. So yes, life continued. But not the life you once knew. It was quieter, more cautious. And even years later, when you hear hooves on the horizon, your heart still stops. For just a second. So, what was the bigger picture? Genghis Khan didn't just conquer cities, he rewired the world. His invasions led to one of the largest empires in history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the edge of Europe. That meant, for the first time, Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Europe were connected under one rule. The Mongol Empire became a massive superhighway for goods, ideas, technologies, and even religions. The Silk Road, once dangerous and disjointed, became protected and profitable. Chinese inventions like gunpowder and paper spread westward. Persian, Arab, and European knowledge moved east. It's hard to believe, but in many ways, this brutal empire helped create the foundation of our global world. Even cultural exchanges increased. The Mongols were famously religiously tolerant, welcoming Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and shamans into their administration. They didn't care what you believed, as long as you followed orders. Of course, the cost was enormous. Millions died. Entire cultures vanished. But the legacy left behind still echoes today, in trade routes, political borders, and even military strategies. As historian Jack Weatherford puts it in his book, Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, he conquered more, faster, and with fewer men than any commander in history, and created the blueprint for modern global connectivity. So the next time you hear the name Genghis Khan, don't just think of horses and swords. Think of the empire that rewrote history, and ask yourself, how much of our modern world was born from the ashes of the cities he burned? And that's the story of what it was like to be invaded by Genghis Khan's army. From the peaceful days before the attack, to the terror of the siege, to the world that rose from the ashes. History isn't just names and dates, it's real people, real fear, and real change. The Mongol invasions weren't just brutal, they reshaped the planet. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. And I'd love to hear from you. What historical moment should we dive into next? Drop it in the comments below.